Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is a work session, and the first item on the agenda is the fiscal year 18-19 tax rate and the fiscal year 18-19 budget discussion regarding economic incentives. Michelle won't be with us, but the other Michelle is. Right, isn't that what's her name? Jennifer is. Michelle too. I call her Michelle too. So.
Yeah, Michelle had a family situation, so she had to leave. And I know this is just a conversation that council wanted to have. I know you've been thinking about the idea of tax incentive programs that could possibly change the tax rate and the budget that you have already for consideration. The only comment I would make is, you're well aware of your time constraints on the budget, and for the new council members, I want to just make sure that you understand that we have to have the tax rate and the budget passed, where we don't get any taxes July 1st. We don't just continue to collect taxes on the current rates that we have. We would be in a situation where we could collect no taxes for the whole fiscal year. So that's the importance of the deadline. So there are some scenarios that Michelle had worked up before she left, and they were on the incremental tax scenarios, the one with the blue. And you could see that you are currently, your current motion and your first introductions were at the 3-cent overall and the 5-cent on the apartments. And that brought in a certain amount of your taxes. She then ran scenario number 8, which is a 6-cent overall and a 9-cent on the apartments, which will give you a little bit less than $1 million for incentives. And if you did a 6.5 overall and a 12 cents on apartments, that would give you the additional $1 million for an incentive program. And then the other sheet that she did was the impact on property owners, and she just looked at that as we had looked at before, with a 3-cent annual, what the annual increase would be on a 3-cent and a monthly increase on a 3-cent based on certain home values, and she did that for the 6 cents and for the 6.5 cents as well. So that's the information that Michelle had ready for you.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow the part you said, scenario 8, is that to mean item number 8 on the sheet with the blue lines?
Yes, you can look at
okay,
it.
so
Item number 8.
that's the difference, and then you take the 1.6 minus the 826, and that's what you're saying is a little less than $1 million?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm following that.
And I know that even the 6.5 and
it's
the
like
12,
780.
yeah, the 6.5 and the 12 cent, where it comes out at 1.796, that's still going to give you the $1 million because of the corporate property income tax as well. But she does not have that on there, but.
Yeah.
Could you say that one more time?
The scenario number 9, which
Okay.
is 6.5 cents and 12 cents on apartments, actually, when you include the corporate personal property tax, does give you close to the $1 million.
But the 6 and 9 does not.
Right, correct.
Okay.
6 and 9 does not. It's about 194,000 short
Well, that's why I think your additional amount will
or so.
cover that shortage.
Yeah, one of the things that we had talked about a couple of weeks ago was the utility tax. So what if we were to divide or add a utility tax in there and not, and not increase as much to the homeowner?
The utility tax would not be something that we could do this quickly in the fiscal year, for the new fiscal year, because we had discussed
there's our
that last
answer.
time. Yeah. That is something that we would need to
6 and 9
work towards
I'm good for 6 and 9.
for next
That doesn't
for
get us
next
exactly
fiscal year.
where we wanted to be, but and I think it's important, for everybody to understand, not at this table, because we all understand what's going on here is, in our last meeting, executive committee meeting, we came to some realizations about economic development downtown. And I would say in the last 2 elections, if not more than that, probably even going beyond that, Bob, you can say to this, and so can you, Kristen, and Emily, that every candidate said, one of the things they really need to do downtown, everybody supported the PEP program, the first third grants. And at this last election, everybody said, yeah, that's great. And we all said, yeah, well, there's no money for it. And very few people addressed that. And that's what we addressed last week. And when staff said to us what our shortage was, and everybody wants to know where all the money got cut from, well, part of it got cut from any potential economic downtown development, the type of funding that we've done in the past. And so the question we're faced with, we can't do any of those fundings without generating more revenue. And I think what we want to stress is if we do what some of us, if not all of us, want to do, that this is an amount that is specifically directed for one purpose and only one purpose. Two, I truly do not believe, I'd say 95% of our citizens have absolutely no idea what's just about to happen in our downtown. I think Saturday, the governor's here, right? When we break ground for the Maryland Theater on Saturday. I don't know when the building's gonna start coming down on West Washington Street. People may not notice the buildings that have come down and are coming down on Antietam Street. There's a lot of things going on, and we have the potential to have a great deal of success. We also have the potential to have loss of some real basic businesses downtown that we cannot afford to lose. So that's basically what we're discussing.
I don't think I can support a 6 and 9 cent, and here's the reason why. We've been deliberating over and over at budget meeting after budget meeting, public hearings. We've had people here with their presentations for and against. We've gotten to, over a period of months, a 3 cent, 5 cent tax increase, which nobody likes, but we know we need to do it. We had to cover a $776,000 shortfall. So that's where we were until a meeting a week ago. And a week ago, we decided we need to refund basically the first third grant program. And to do that, we need a 6 and 9 cent tax increase. And we said in the meeting in there, and we agreed, yes, we want to take a positive, dramatic step for downtown development. We want to show, that we've got what it takes and we can do it, and we can put our money where our mouth is and all that. We jumped on that thing like a free pony ride at the fair. But then after thinking about it, I don't think we can do that to the public. I mean, after going through everything that we've gone through, meeting after meeting after meeting, and explaining to people why we need a 3 cent increase across the board, and why we're going to elevate the rental property for 4 units or more an additional 2 cents, then to come back at the 0 hour and say, oh, guess what? We just decided we need some more money and we can do a lot of great things with it. If I was not sitting at this table, if I was just living in North Hagerstown and you did that, I'd be the first one at the door with the pitchfork and the torch.
And the only thing I would say to that, Austin, is one thing and only one thing. The reason it came up last week is because for the first time since we've having a budget discussion, we learned of the potential to lose a major downtown anchor, which never came up at all before last Tuesday.
But we don't know that for a fact.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I want to stop. I just want to say, whether we know it for a fact or not, I just want to try to explain to the public and responding to you of why this would come up at the very last minute.
I think it's
because that fact came up at the very last minute.
I think it's a great idea, and, if we had gotten here over a period of 2.5 months, I'd be all for it. But I don't think we can do it at the 0 hour here. I don't think it's fair to the public.
This reminds me of last year, I think I said this in email, in our tax hearing when the gentleman stood up here and said, I understand the need for a tax increase, but there's been no urgency in this body. And I ask that going into next year, you guys have some sort of urgency in figuring out what your goals are, what your visions are. And here we are sitting here at the end of May, pretty much June 1st. We're 6 months into having 2 new members, and we still don't have a goal. We still, like, what is the goal of this body? We don't have a vision. I think this is a very last-minute thing to do to staff. I mean, Michelle's probably pulling her hair out at us right now, and let alone the public. And I understand we absolutely need economic development, absolutely, and these projects are important. This should have been our goal all along. And that's frustrating. I think we need to have a clear vision, and we're not giving it to staff. We are all over the place. One day we were set on 3 across the board, then we wanted apartments, then we wanted duplexes, then we wanted straight across the board. Now we want to double what we've advertised. Like, this is not a good look for us. I think we need to, as a body, come up with some very strategic goals over the next several months. So this time next year, we're not doing the same thing.
I agree, and I think, you know, one of the things I keep asking for in emails is that we continue the budget review process after June 1, so that this doesn't happen again to us next year at this time. And, you know, the first third program, that was funded in 2013, and then by 2014, all 3 projects had been approved, and basically the money was gone. So we sat for 4 years unfunded, and then to come in 5 days from the deliberation date and say, we want to fund it again, it just.
But with the program, with this increase, we can actually create a reason why people want to develop here. Because right now, there is no reason why. It's not the cultural trail, it's not the Hagerstown Suns, it's not the development of the theater. If you go down to a real estate meeting, people don't want to develop here. So this is a reason, and again, we didn't know this a couple months ago. We didn't know that it was, you know, that we could run into this problem, or the fact that, you know, I think that there is somewhat of a goal.
But I think we did. I think we all knew economic development should have been in our forefront, and it hasn't been.
Well,
I would, as I said, if this were 3 months ago and we were starting to discuss it, I'd probably be all over 6 and 9 to give us an additional $800,000 of economic development money. But I don't feel, I just don't feel that it's right to do.
so I know that we sit here and I say this over and over, and we talk about that number, and I know the reporter's sitting there and he hears 6 cents and 9 cents versus 3 cents and 5 cents. And we don't talk to the taxpayer in real dollars when we talk that way. And I keep saying that, you know, and we have, you know, I think we had 4 people speak at the budget hearing, right? And I contacted 2 of them directly and had a conversation directly on this item as it applies to my, obviously my feelings on it, you know, and I know that I sort of threw this out at, you know, during our discussions, and here's the reality. One of the speakers brought up the issue, well, the city's going to gain money next year. When you look at what you're actually going to take in, I think it was like $1.6 million, right? What they don't tell you in those deliberations, and I believe that was Delegate Quarterman who brought that up, who's the same person that's saying, hey, city, we're going to need another couple $100,000 from you for the Maryland Theater. But don't adjust anything you're doing to be able to come up with that money. And at the same time, please keep paying the employees, you know, the wages and benefits to the levels that you know that I think were, you know, appropriate, you know, when I was taking their support. And that's a little disingenuous for me when I hear that from folks, you know, that have that knowledge base of the subject matter, because about half of that is in actual growth, right? And I think the other half roughly is in the adjustment to the tax rate. And let's quit using increase and decrease. Let's use the word adjustment to the tax rate, because that's about what's happening. I've watched my taxes be adjusted up, and the actual amount of them go down for 12 years, I guess now, in what I actually pay. And so the adjustment next year, to me, the average taxpayer for 3 cents, and I'm not really speaking to the body now, but more the public, is about $40. So that adjustment of about $40 is a contribution. It equates to about 2.5% of what I pay now, and it'll go. So 800,000 is in new growth. The other 800,000 that's generated by this adjustment in the tax rate is going to cover largely most of those agreements that we have with adjustments in employee wages and benefits. That's what's happening, and I keep saying the two largest categories is public safety. And you know, if nothing else, what I've heard from the public in my tenure in this position is we need you to do two things. We want you to clean up downtown, and we want you to adequately fund public safety. I mean, those are the two sort of messages that you hear, and I'm looking at Lou and Bob, that you hear sort of year in and year out. You know, and so you're sitting in a meeting, and you know, this isn't just about one project downtown. This is about a half a dozen of them, roughly, that sort of get floated through the course of that conversation. And I'm going to say it again here, just like I said in that closed session, and you're trying to figure out, you know, which one of those projects is going to sort of win the golden ticket of economic development that you might have the ability to scrape some money together for next year. All for the sake of saving the average homeowner, taxpayer, property owner like myself $12. And I find that a little difficult, and I wish that things were as straight and fluid a process as we would all like every one of these items to be, but they're just not. They're just not, and things come up through the course of that deliberation, which is why you get months of deliberation to get through that process to settle on what you feel is the most appropriate rate on that tax to apply to the things you'd like to accomplish in the year ahead. That's just the bottom line. And so I'm just going to read this briefly as I wrote it, because it's hard for me to make sense about this to the average taxpayer otherwise. So basically the solution that I had proposed was we adjust the tax rate an additional 3 cents and 4 cents, meaning up to 6 and 9, on 6 cents on non-apartments and 9 cents on apartments. That amounts to, on average, an additional $36 to the average property owner and about $48 to the average apartment building, for a total adjustment to the taxes for next year of $72 for the average homeowner and $108 to the average apartment building, or somewhere between $5 and $8 a month to the average property. I would venture most utility bills are going up more than that. That means that the city will be using roughly 5% of your annual tax bill on the specific economic development initiative known as the First Third program. That's 5% of your roughly $1,200 that you pay are going to actually be earmarked and used for economic development. And to explain that First Third a little bit, it was a wildly successful program in its first year, and you're right. You know, we had sort of, I'll call it the post-stadium, what do we do now, sort of moment and thought process of, okay, if we're not going to do this, then we need to come up with some competitive sort of initiative to continue some energy here, and it worked. It was successful. And I have said, you know, for 17 years now, I firmly believe the best way to lift this ship is to lift it all at once. I just do not believe in some silver bullet single project to make that happen anywhere in this city. I just don't believe that it exists, and so you need to sort of find a way to do that across the board in sort of all parts of your development activity. So you're right, we ran out of money. It was so successful in a year that we ran out of money, and we got the Patterson, and we got the Grand, and a couple of other big buildings, and we got 38 new homeowners in houses that had sat vacant for more than a year. And if you remember the old Nolan building on the other side of the overpass on Virginia Avenue that hadn't been occupied since Nolan left in the 80s when they built the overpass, we got a business in there, and they put money into that building, and those things happen. And I feel like, we sort of, revert to that discussion. So I guess for me, what I said is, you adjust the rate as proposed to 6 and 9 cents. It means an additional $3 on average. And you earmark that revenue for economic development. And I think that you need to make that clear to your employee groups, this is money for economic development. This would provide about $750,000 for up to 3 projects of major buildings. We got at least a half a dozen what I would call possible developments of major buildings downtown. This will do 3 a year at minimum of 3 a year at up to $250,000 if the private developer puts in $500,000 of their own money. I think that we're aware enough at this point. There's probably not a single building down here that you can do for less than $1 million. I think in all of those projects, it's been proven that. And that leaves you $250,000 left. And I said you take $100,000 of that and you carve it out into 4 grants. And any private business that exists now and wants to expand or wants to come into this city, $25,000 if they put 50 grand in. So you're getting 2 to 1 again on that 100,000. And you break that remaining 150 out, and you start back up the home ownership program. We certainly still have our fair share of houses that have been sitting vacant for more than 12 months, and you provide that to potential home buyers that want to use up to $7,500 for either down payment or HVAC and plumbing and those types of things that were left abandoned when the houses were vacated. That gets you 10. That gets you a minimum of 10 new homeowners in the city a year. And everybody who lives in these neighborhoods can think of at least one house where they're like, yeah, it's been vacant forever. And then the other thing that I thought was a good thing was you take that last $75,000 and I've been saying this for some time, to find a way to help landlords. Is any landlord willing to put 15 grand into a place? You give them $7,500. So you can do a minimum of 10 of these a year, and 10 revamped apartment buildings a year goes a long way. Just in 5 years alone, if you were just to do that, and I hear you're saying about come up with a plan, if you were just to do that, it would cost me, the average taxpayer, $180 over a 5-year period. That's what it would cost me to you in additional money. But what that gets me at the end of the day is 15 of these buildings downtown redeveloped at 2 to 1 on the money by private developers. It gets me 20 small businesses either expanded or come in. It gets me 50 new homeowners, and it gets me 50 reinvestments in apartment buildings. And if you told me I get that as a homeowner for an extra $180 over a 5-year period, I'd say, where do I sign?
And that's our why.
And so I just firmly believe, that if you could get this accomplished, get this started and put this in place, you're going to see real results, just like we saw on those homes, on these large buildings, on some of these businesses that came in. And I really like the addition of a landlord component because I think that we do need to put that carrot out there for market rate redevelopment of these apartment buildings for market rate rental. And that's where
I
I'm
would
at.
only offer that any
So-
savings that you find in other areas go toward a demolition fund.
I think that's great. I think we need $250,000 a year in demolition.
We
fund.
do have monies in demolition plus the CDBG money, but I don't think it's quite 250,000.
I think that has to happen. I mean, I just look and I just look at that and say, man, for $40 a year, the city is actually putting together something that's raising all parts of the ship. It's raising the apartments. It's raising these homes that we want folks in and living. It's raising these buildings that are small, that are having a hard time competing with the proliferation of shopping center, style, business acumen. It's finding a real measure of funding that it's going to take to bring these big buildings down here, into that usable and redeveloped condition that we all want to see them in. And just in the few, specific ones that we talked about, and the ones we've actually seen go from point A to point B, like the Patterson, I mean, just look at that and you say, how can you not do that?
Well, you say Patterson, some of us have short memories on how completely dilapidated the Grand was.
Oh, yeah.
It was pretty much done, and the same thing is true of professional arts. There are 3 buildings that were born in this community that are now vibrant and bringing in lots.
The Grand had one tenant left in that building when we started that program. It was one of the first that we offered it to. And it now has 21 businesses and more than 80 employees.
So I think what you just said, that was a great sales pitch. So I think what the city needs to do is cut that clip out of you going over those very specific items and market that. Because what's gonna happen is, let's be honest, no one trusts government. You get elected into office, and you all of a sudden become some lying robot. You're no longer human. So we're saying, hey, we're going to put $1 million in the Economic Development Fund, and there's gonna be half the population who don't believe that. So I think it's important for us to show where the money's going. So that was a great explanation of that, but I think going forward, whether it be on our website, on our social media, somehow say, here's, we just awarded $250,000 to building XYZ. Here's what it produced, or,
And I think we need to have examples of exactly how those buildings went from point A to point B, like the
Exactly.
Patterson. Or the house that we saw on Guilford Avenue, where the staff came in and showed us the picture of it. It was like falling down, and then it shows us the picture the next day, or of after the development, and we're like, that's not even the same house. The one on Chestnut Street that participated.
Well, and I do think that, anyone that owns a home that's worth $200,000 in the city of Hagerstown for $130 a year to get what they deserve and what they want in their downtown, I think that no one would object to that.
And not just downtown, anywhere. I mean,
No,
focus
Yeah.
you're
on,
talking about
you know.
citywide, this
Yeah,
definitely affects citywide.
citywide.
I'm also very hopeful that everything that we've been told is true, and that by 2019, what downtown looks like now is gonna be totally different, absolutely different.
And I think that we have sort of that same level, and I said this in the meeting last week, I think we have sort of this moment of energy, just like we did in 2012, where sort of one fizzles and you come up with this other and you make it work. Right now, UIP, I don't know, is that what we're supposed to call it?
I think we're still calling it that, I don't know.
It sort of has this moment of energy, and we can see that just in the Baltimore Street area, things that we hear of, and post that product, that energy level will then sort of decline, as you point out, and you'll go a couple of years going, okay, what do we do now? And if you don't capitalize on that now, then you're gonna miss that opportunity.
And I will stop after this, but tonight, just looking at the agenda, I was on our website. And as the thing goes, it mentions the National Geographic Travelers Magazine. And I went and I looked at all 31 of those cities that National Geographic is recommending, and I gotta tell you, without pointing to what things have been done or anything else, the fact that Hagerstown is named as one of 31 cities that you can't miss to travel to. I mean, you're talking about, Albuquerque, New Mexico, major New Orleans, and there's Hagerstown. And we're at a cusp right now of which way we want to go. Does anybody remember how many nights the Maryland Theater says they're going to be live after they get up and running? It was
Well, they
upwards of,
expected
it was
200,000.
upwards of 300 nights a year, wasn't it?
It was like
If not more.
253.
Yeah.
Something 250.
And we've already established that every night the Maryland Theater is hopping, every restaurant in town is hopping, and every time that happens, the whole downtown is. And again, I look at the Jamison Door example, and I don't want to find we get there, and I'm not criticizing the county, because I think what the county may have did was probably financially appropriate. But if the similar type thing happens to us, it's going to be a major issue. I'm done.
Austin, anything else?
I think, I'm 100% behind what we've talked about here, developing a budget for downtown development. And I think it's an excellent direction to set for the FY20 budget. And additionally, I think as we get there, we need to look at additional areas. You've brought up some great examples. You know, why can't we do bond funding for some things that we don't do bond funding for now? Let's look for additional areas in the budget to cut, consolidate, reduce expenses, and let's go forward with the idea that we're going to do a tax increase, or somehow we're going to fund the, this economic development kitty. But again, you know, we keep saying it's only $40 to this guy, and you know, that owns this level of house and everything else. But we also said his utilities bills are going up. The family's utility bills are going up. Their health insurance is going up. We're loading so much of this on the residents of the city that are our taxpayers. And to do it in this manner, to do it in the 0 hour without any discussion, I think it's wrong. I just feel it is, I mean, I wasn't elected, I was appointed. So, you know, I don't have a constituent base out there that I'm trying to lobby to or anything. I just think it is wrong to do to the taxpayer. I think if we set out our goals and say, okay, taxpayers, we're looking at next year, we need to have a kitty of $800,000 or more, maybe $1 million for economic development. And maybe we have to float some bonds in the meantime with the idea of paying those back to get that kitty right now. I'm for that, but to say this is, we just light bulb just went off and this is what we're doing, suck it up, pay your tax bill because we need the money and we've had a great idea. I can't do that.
But we at least have a plan with
We
the
have a
increase,
plan.
which is more
I
than.
think this plan is great. I love everything that's been read there. If we can finance that program with a bond, with the idea that we pay that back,
We wouldn't be able to bond finance something like that. No, our bond council wouldn't allow us to do that. It has to be a capital asset that has a life of 20 years or more to bond finance it.
Like a backhoe,
like a backup.
right? Backhoe has a life of 20 years?
Not
Well,
norm-
no, it doesn't.
Not
It only has
normally.
7, yeah.
But we did it.
No, not pieces of equipment.
I
Yeah.
think that,
But we're bonding.
I think that if we go down that road, what we're, and I said this as well in my communication, I think that we constantly come up with ways to make it appear by those maneuvers that we have more money. And we don't, and I'll say it this way, we got a meeting a week from now on an issue that we have squarely pointed out has a degree of unfairness as it applies to taxes for our citizens for the specific service of fire service. I mean that, and I say that in the ball of the differential. And there's at least 2 items right out of the gate, one that you've identified, you know, of what our volunteer service receives or doesn't receive, and one that the mayor said a little earlier, which is the 911. Right there is $900,000. All I'm saying is, I plan, if we can head this course this evening, I plan to definitely make that an argument next week as part and parcel to why I think it is incumbently fair for the county to consider that redress to us and be able to show them, here's what we plan to do with it. You want us to be partners at this table of these larger projects like the theater and all of these things downtown. You want us to increase our tax base to start you know, competing a little better on the broad, you know, countywide scale, rather than being the only place where they're declining. Here's where we plan to do that. And I plan on bringing that $1 million back from that table, right in that conversation, being able to show to them, hey, you know, we plan on lifting the ship. Here's how we plan to do it. You have some redress to us as it applies, you know, frankly, largely, and I look at the chief when I say this, largely to the level of fire service we're providing, this is one of those items. This is one of those items. And I firmly believe that that additional differential needs to be about 14 to 17 cents, but we're only talking 4 cents here. Even if I can get them off the dime on that small amount, I think we'd be able to say that in that article.
So the question is, do we have 3 votes? I don't think anybody's gonna change their minds.
I'm not.
I'm okay with 6 and 9.
I'm okay. So then the next question is, do we have a motion for 6 and 9?
Well.
Well, you'd have to,
If we're going to go 6 and 9, we have to take a adjournment.
recess.
A short recess, and staff has to go. We have to go write
Plug numbers in.
the motions and change the ordinance and
Well, I
and
think you
do
have 3
those
votes
things.
for it.
We had talked before about 4 votes, and I have a
Well.
concern if there is any
You
sort
gonna
of,
veto it, Mayor?
I have to, I mean, we really need to know that
Well,
tonight.
he just said he's not gonna veto it.
Okay.
So that takes care of that problem.
And Austin, I think that, I mean, one last thing, just like you, I was appointed and have no constituent base at all. But I think if we don't do it now, when the momentum is there, I just think that there'll be another reason next year that it's not done. I really do.
I would,
Election year.
Oh,
I
and
will
then
say that I would feel extremely more comfortable, and I know we don't get to that number, using 5 and 10, but I've always said, and I said 10 2 months ago, and I still think that's the
We got
right
a
number.
good compromise now at 6 and 9. And Austin, I respect your opinion, I understand it, that's why we have 5 people.
And I want to clarify too, that the 6 and 9 doesn't bring it exactly to the million. that-
But there's some savings
We
along the way.
understand,
Yes.
yeah.
And when can we do the utility? I mean, you said that we can't do that for this fiscal year.
Yeah, we need to see how that would impact, how we would
Yeah,
even
next
have to
year.
implement that, but yeah,
Okay.
fiscal year 20.
And I truly believe that our conversations, beginning after this budget is passed, like Austin wants to do, has to revolve around, okay, what governmental entities in the city of Hagerstown get a free ride? There's plenty.
And you have, yeah.
I mean, our government buildings pay us, okay? But county government buildings don't pay us. State government buildings don't pay us. But the city's government buildings pay us.
Right, all the nonprofits, the majority of them are exempt.
I mean, I think there has to be a conversation about that, and
And I think that also to, to the point of continuing to work on it, your budget is not, I mean, dead set in
Understand.
stone.
And
I mean, it
Michelle
could-
has offered to
I
meet
mean,
whenever.
we
to
can
go through this.
continue to talk about amending the budget after the fiscal year. The only thing you cannot amend is your tax rate
Right.
within the year, but there's other things that you can amend.
I just don't want to end up at this point next year with a light bulb going off saying, oh,
and Emily
you
brought
know,
up,
we bought a bunch
Yes.
of street sweepers, and we loaned money to buy a Zamboni, and we bought all new Glocks for the
Yeah.
police department, and we did all these great things, and, oh gee, we need another $800,000 because we don't have it.
Right.
well, and Emily brought up a good point, that this administration hasn't set a new goal, okay? But, and I asked the city administrator earlier to make sure that she hands out the strategic plan that was passed in 2010 to every council member again. And we have the city center plan that was passed in 14, 13?
14, I believe.
14?
13 or 14. 14.
And if we can't garner some of those ideas to focus on, things that have been planned for now 8 years.
Yeah, right. And
listen.
also, I had sent a document out quite a while back with about 18 different ideas for you as well, that included pieces of the 2010 plan, your new comprehensive plan, which is a strategic plan for 2035. You guys, we just finished
In all
that,
fairness, though, I
and
mean,
city center plan.
We have 3 members that are new.
Right.
The original election, it took almost 3 weeks to find out who the 5 members were gonna be. With all due respect, it appeared that one of the members who got elected really was only here to make sure he moved on to get out of here, and was not at all in concert with the balance of the council. I mean, that was clear as the day was long. That was somebody who wouldn't even agree to raise taxes to give us the same revenue as we had the year before. So it was hard to get that together.
Sure.
And then next thing we have is we have a resignation that we didn't expect. So it is hard, is I don't have to tell Austin and Shelley the learning curve. And while you're doing the learning curve, to think that I mean, you guys came in when, what month?
Shelley was December, Austin was January.
January 30, so February.
And this is May? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a good reason we haven't sat down and had a big to-do about what our plans are.
Right.
When you already see what the budget is like, which basically starts pretty much in March, the middle of March, and is nonstop from there. And yeah, we haven't had that ability at all, and it's nobody's fault here. It's nobody's fault at all. It's just been an impossible thing to do, and that is candidly what the summer's made for. Because things slow down in the summer, there's no
Right.
question about it.
In our two strategic meetings last year proved that, you know, we had some ideas from last year. One of them, of course, was the tax differential on homeowners and rentals. So, I mean, some of those things have come out of those first two strategic meetings.
So Christian has soccer games at 6.
Yeah, we gotta get this, give them about 15 minutes to write this.
Yeah, give us 10 or 15
Donna's
minutes,
busy, I'm sure,
and we'll go,
not doing that.
we'll go do
You're
them.
taking minutes. All right, we'll adjourn for 15 minutes and meet back up here and go into special session.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
Donna, you want to just go in your office and we'll go from there? Okay.
And welcome back. I need to get a motion to go into special session.
So moved.
Second by, this guy. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First order of business is amendment of an ordinance, tax rates beginning July 1, 2018.
Mr. Mayor, I move to amend the ordinance as introduced on May 15, 2018 to establish the city's tax rates for the fiscal year July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2019 as follows on the basis of 1.002 per $100 of assessed value of all real property except properties designated as apartments, which will be 1.032 per $100 of assessed value and 2.505 per $100 of assessed value of all business personal property within the city of Hagerstown. These rates reflect an increase of 0.061 per $100 for real property, except apartments increase of 0.091 and 0.152 per $100 for business personal property over the current year.
Second.
Discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think that we should increase the tax rate that amount, and I think that we should look for ways to fund economic development through borrowing or some other means right now, and then address how we are going to pay for this in the fiscal 2020 budget. I don't think it's fair to the taxpayers right now to do this at the 0 hour without public discussion, without transparency. I think there are other ways that we could do this if we could devote the time to it. And again, if this had come up 2-3 months ago as a goal, I think we could have worked it out, and I think we could have found some way to pay for it other than put it on the backs of property owners.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 4-1. Approval of an ordinance, tax rates beginning July 1, 2018.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for the approval of an ordinance introduced on May 15th, 2018, and amended on May 29th, 2018, to establish the city's tax rates for the fiscal year July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 4-1. Amendment of an ordinance, budget fiscal year 2018, 2019.
Mr. Mayor, we move to amend the ordinance as introduced on May 15, 2018 to adopt the city's budget for fiscal year July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2019 as follows in the total amount of $141,985,310.
Second.
Discussion.
That amount is, that's been adjusted to take into account the 6%
That's
increase?
with the new rates, that gives you $854,000, because remember, we had $50,000 additional in the first place. And then the $804,000 is the dollar amount that the change will bring in.
So that's $854,000 that's going towards the economic
No.
development?
50,000 had been decided that was going towards agency contributions, and part of that was going to go towards Brooks House. That was a decision earlier.
Okay.
So 804,000 would be the dollar amount that we would have now to begin our economic redevelopment program. Okay?
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 4-1. Approval of an ordinance, budget fiscal year 2018, 2019.
Just, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, hereby move for the approval of an ordinance introduced on May 15, 2018, and amended on May 29, 2018, to adopt the city's budget for the fiscal year July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2019.
Second.
Discussion?
Again, I I applaud what we're doing in the way of trying to find monies to fund economic development. I think putting it on the back of the taxpayer right now without exhausting all other mechanisms, including any kind of financing, approaching the state for a loan, approaching anybody who would loan us money to do that, so that we can have another year to figure out how to reduce that loan and how to pay for it. And if it means the only way that we can do it is raise taxes, have open, transparent discussions with the taxpayers and convince them of the need to do this.
I think that the taxpayer will be very happy with to know that their taxes are now going to something other than just covering salaries and watching the really fabulous things that are about to unfold. And I really think that although I wish that there were other ways and borrowing money doesn't seem like the right way to do it, I really feel like the time is now.
I think I agree with you, the time is now, we need to do something, but I think borrowing money is one thing, taking money is another. And I feel like we are taking money from the taxpayers without them having any notion that the car was coming around the corner and it just hit them square on.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 4-1. That's it for our special session. We are adjourned. Have a good soccer game.
So, with my cats, my sister just.
Okay, you have a question?
Thank you. Yes, we do.